According to Georgia Theater owner Wilmot Green, the people of Georgia take great pride in their downtowns, local music, and the city of Athens. After 2 years of waiting, the city of Athens is to embrace the man who's brought back the venue that offers a look at new talent, a new future, downtown, and clean toilets. From a building gutted by fire to a theater where the magic and music are back, this is 215 Lumpkin Street, the Georgia Theater.
I wake up at about 6:30. I haven't set an alarm since the fire. A friend of the family's, the Wilhites, live in Gainesville, and Mr. Wilhite owns a package warehouse. They make boxes, and his business burned down. And they came back from the fire, and his business ended up being very successful. And so after the fire, he was kind enough to send me a package of him and his crew. Said we survived the fire, and in the package had a box of matches. I've told that story to someone, and they said, "Oh, that's fantastic. Do you still have the matches?" I said, "No, actually, I used every one of those matches smoking cigarettes because this whole process has driven me so crazy."
Down 4 feet. Move it down.
I woke up to a text message from my boss.
You know, actually, I was home when it started.
Georgia Theater on fire is all it said. So I jumped out of bed and hopped on my bike.
To be perfectly honest, typically my first response to those kinds of phone calls is I don't rush to the scene.
The streets were blocked off, every direction around it.
And I'm always very reticent about getting into the middle of something like that.
The fire marshal's worried that the ashes would spread to all the other buildings and we'd end up with some massive Chicago fire of 2009, you know. So anyway, long story short, they let us through the blockade. We got to go up, check the roof. Everything was fine. And at that point, we felt lucky to be past all the blockades, so we just hung out in here and had a beer and kind of let the firefighters come in and out and use the bathroom and kind of watched it burn down.
And then I finally came down about 4:30. And so I spent some time that afternoon talking to Will Green, the owner, and I spent some time talking to the firefighters and just checking in with them and making sure that they were okay and telling them that I was appreciative of the work they had done, and then just talked to Will for a little while because I knew he was upset, obviously.
Saddest thing, though, was watching that damn thing burn. You know, I didn't really expect to see it come back.
You know, the Georgia Theater was built in 1889, and it was a YMCA. And in 1889, if you wanted to hang out with your friends, you went to the YMCA. That's what people did. And then in the 30s, this was converted to a movie theater. And in the 30s, if you wanted to hang out with your friends, you went to the movies.
I'm 54. The first time I went in there, I was 4 years old. And I saw 101 Dalmatians in there.
And then in the 70s, late 70s, it was converted to a rock club.
Heard they were building a music hall here when I was in college, and everybody, you know, in college was looking for part-time work, so we came down here and got hired and just dug around in the nastiest places you could possibly imagine, all under the stage. There was like this entire labyrinth down there, and we were just pulling out all this old movie memorabilia, and we had worked so diligently and so hard to get the theater that we all knew that we would have jobs when the theater opened, and they fired every one of us and hired their friends.
When Sam Smart and Hep Harris opened the place up, I'm almost sure it was January, February of '78, certainly right around then, and it was Chuck Leavell and Sea Level.
We had our first date here. So it was a John Hartford concert, but I don't think that was the first concert they had. It was
Sea Level.
It was Sea Level, who's their second night opening act for this year. So
Chuck Leavell.
Well, it's Chuck Leavell, yeah.
But it's really Sea Level.
Say it's Chuck Leavell, say it's Sea Level. Either way, the city of Athens is excited to have this talented man from Macon back on the Georgia Theater stage during the reopening. Chuck spent his life in front of a piano and on the road with the Rolling Stones, Allman Brothers, and Eric Clapton. I was very fortunate to sit down and have a chat with him at Jim Hawkins' studio here in Athens, get his thoughts, his memories, his special feelings about this historic theater.
What does a Georgia theater mean to the state of music in general, specifically Georgia, but overall, really? It's a place that has quite a history.
Well, it does, and just that kind of venue in general is so important for musicians like myself and others. You know, even some of the big bands that I play with, the Rolling Stones, you know, before we do a tour, what do? We go play a club. Yep. And to play a venue like the Georgia Theater is so important, you know, to be able to have access to that. And of course, it's great for the fans. I think it was the vibe, Charlie, more than anything else. You know, it just had a great vibe inside. The people that came really enjoyed themselves. They were very comfortable. The bands were comfortable. The stage is big enough, but not, you know, too big for the kind of thing we were doing. Of course, we were just a quartet with Sea Level when we opened it up, and yeah, I look forward to coming back, man. It was a tragedy, of course, that it burned down, and I think a lot of people were very upset about it, myself included, but hey, it came back, yes.
I finally quit playing music when I turned 30, and I got a corporate job, and I moved to Charlotte and worked in corporate America. I decided that I wanted to come back to Athens. I really missed Athens. And so I was gonna come here and just open some kind of business, because I knew I was tired of having a boss.
I want to say it was 2002 or 3 when he came in to buy it, and he just kind of popped up, and it was odd because we didn't know, you know, hadn't seen him in a while. And next thing you know, those guys are selling it to him.
I did the math one time. I think we've had like 10,000 bands play here. That's a lot of bands. And so, you know, maybe as many as 100,000 ticket buyers a year for 22 years now. So what's that, 2.2 million people? Or is that 22 million people? I can't do that math. Anyway, lots of people have come to the Georgia Theater.
I grew up in Athens, so this is the first place I ever saw a rock and roll show. First place I ever snuck into when I was too young. It might have been my first beer at a bar. I mean, that place is like where me and my friends have always hung out.
The first time this band played in the Georgia Theater, mind you, we all have a long history with the Georgia Theater, but this band, Kite to the Moon, was Athfest 2007. And we did a big show, and that was actually the first time that we had brought trapeze artists in. So they did a trapeze performance. And it was the first time also that we had video accompaniment on the big screen behind us.
And I remember one time I did something like called a bunch of audience members up on stage and had them dance. Or I said I'd give them a free CD. And the girls would come and dance, and then we played something that was undanceable. It was like about 200 beats per minute or something. And we just kind of wobbled around. Like giving everybody a CD. But I remember at the time, it seems really funny, and I think it was funny at the time and now. But I remember at the time the band getting really upset with me as if I had somehow like blackened our honor, or I had somehow like ruined
nobody's gonna take us seriously any longer.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I came here was actually to see one of Timmy's bands, and I was like 15 years old, and I was sitting in a chair, just looking around going, this is a real show. You know, this is awesome. This is a real show, and I'm still in Athens. And from the looks of the new theater, it looks like.
Wait a minute, how old were you?
I was 15.
What year was that?
You were what, 37?
That was at least 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was about 3 years.
I just remember when Infected Mushroom came here, because that's a band that I wasn't expecting to be in Athens at all. I mean, you come to Athens and you get sort of the same type of music all the way through. And then this psychedelic electronic dance band comes here. And it blew my mind to hear such a different genre here, which is actually about the time that we started playing. So I like to think that that was a bit of an influence for, yes, we can do this kind of music here.
I guess that first show that I saw here, which was Vic Chestnut with Widespread Panic, was pretty cool, because I grew up in Augusta, and always wanted to go to Athens and see a show, and namely at the Georgia Theater, it was like, you know, very synonymous with the time, and like, that was just, if you went to Athens, you had to go to a show at the theater, and mine just happened to be an extra special one. And yeah, I'll never forget that. It was pretty, you know, just standing out front of even before the show and seeing people I knew, and it was just kind of that, one of the first, like, going way out of town to see a concert kind of things, you know, it was far from home.
Oh, well, we did have a world record group hug here with a previous band I played in, Fuzzy Sprouts, and that was, I believe that was 1997, and I have every signature. It was over 230 people in a world record group hug right here.
1997?
I think it was it was either 96 or 97.
The first time I played here was 96.
Yeah. And I ushered in the new millennium playing here with that band also. So that was huge. Yeah. Everybody thought the lights were going to go, but they didn't. And when they didn't, yeah, when the clock ticked midnight, everybody was like,
You got your 2-second pause.
yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, it worked.
I'm in a couple bands. One of them is Half Dozen Brass Band. We played there not long before it burned, actually. Kind of the spring before it burned. I was in the George W. Bush cover band, a little political satire band. That one played there. The Shrinks played there. I've played there a lot, yeah.
Let's see. I saw Merle Haggard at the Georgia Theater on the day that Waylon Jennings died. And that was great.
I play in Breathlanes and Cosmic Charlie, and Cosmic Charlie's first show ever was August 1st, 1999. And so we were going to have our 10th anniversary, August 1st. It happened to be on a Saturday again. And but the place burned 2 months earlier, so we couldn't do it, but we'll get there sooner or later.
Who have I seen? Well, the first time I was here, I saw John Hartford. I have seen Randall Bramlett. I'm coming to see Patterson Hood and Drive-By Truckers and Sea Level. I have seen my husband play with Slippery People.
Lucinda Williams, to the Ramones, to Psychedelic Furs, to REM.
Oh, man.
Too many to mention.
Yeah, like
remember.
I said, the Fuzzy Sprouts was the first show I ever came to here, and probably, honestly, the first 20 shows I came to here was probably the Fuzzy Sprouts.
Oh my God.
But
Dirty Dozen Brass Band.
Tons.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Government Mule.
I came here probably, I don't know when that would have been. It was probably in the late 80s, first time I ever came, and saw Widespread Panic. It was awesome, you know, so, but yeah. Many Georgia theater experiences. Beck was awesome.
Sound Tribe, Sector 9,
Beck.
Perpetual Groove.
Did you actually go to the Beck concert?
Yeah.
Ween, Cheap Trick.
There's something fairly cool about being 15 feet away from Cheap Trick and having Rick Nielsen throw picks that hit you in the face.
David Byrne, Tom Tom Club. Man, too many to mention. And so many great local acts.
And of course us.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about the aquarium rescue unit coming back. That's a big deal. They were big when I was in college, and I was here the night that they filmed that they recorded their live album, which is going on to be one of the greatest live albums. You know, it's kind of in the lore of great live albums.
My very first show I ever played in Athens was at the Georgia Theater on Halloween. We did Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars album, tribute album to David Bowie. And so I'm really psyched to see it come back and come back better than ever. And I used to play some music with Will Green, so I'm very excited for him. I know that this is a labor of love for him, so I'm really happy that he's able to do it in the way he wants to do it.
Yeah, I'm so happy they're doing what they're doing, but I know what it's taken them to get to where they are, and I know how much they've got left to do in this amount of time.
I've really just been like a general contractor in a lot of ways. So it's just construction business. I'm just been in the construction business. It's actually not a historic landmark. It's a contributing building in a historic district. And I'm not really exactly sure what the difference is, but this building certainly has a history as much as any building around, certainly any building in Athens.
I've seen the Georgia Theater change a little throughout the years, but not much. I mean, they had done some renovations after Will bought it, and I think the bathrooms were a little bit nicer than they had been at one time.
I mean, every club gets dirty. And sometimes what I say to people is, well, I hope that the place is dirty. That means we had a successful night. At 2 o'clock in the morning, the place should be dirty. I hope it's dirty. And I think people remember that. But at the beginning of the night, the place was pretty clean. It always was. And you get that kind of when you walk on the floor. But lots of floors do that. It doesn't necessarily have to be nasty for the floor to sound like that.
I loved how like crappy and dingy and dirty it was right before it burned down.
For a long time, all I ever drank there was bottled beer, because apparently the tap lines ran all the way from the top all the way down to the basement for some years, and you would end up with a draft beer with a bunch of debris in it or something like that. So I never saw the actual tap lines, but that was the story. So I'm glad to see that that's gone, I guess. So.
The atmosphere, the feeling here was just so incredibly comfortably nasty.
You know, as far as I could tell, it had really the same feel that it always had up until the fire. I mean, again, they had brought some stuff up to code and made some things a little bit nicer, added a few amenities, but I think that when it reopens, it's going to be a really different place. And I know that Will has taken a lot of care to preserve a lot of the feel that it's always had, and I hope that he's been successful at it. I don't think we'll really know until it opens.
A part of the whole fire story that I think a lot of people don't realize, people that hadn't been here since their college days or whatnot, that the place was in really good shape. We had the place in really good shape. We had new curtains, new PA, new bathrooms, painted the whole place, fixed tons of wiring, fixed lots of things. It was to the point where it was easier to say what we hadn't fixed yet than to list what we had fixed. And so that was part of what made it so tough when it burned down, that it was something that we had poured every bit of energy and love and sweat and money into for 5 years, and then it all went up in flames.
They've obviously done this like mega facelift to the place and made it look really great and new and pretty, but I thought that it would have been pretty cool if they'd like come back in and rebuilt it like exactly the same, like distressed the floors and like chipped away the wood at the bar and like made it to where when you walk in, like the same stains were on the carpet and everything. Like it would have been pretty cool if it would have been like you walked in and it was like nothing ever happened.
My days have been long and it's stressful, but the results are fantastic. I couldn't be more pleased with the results.
It's much better than my idea, but I still thought it would have been funny.
It's a really beautiful building, so we had a beautiful canvas of sorts to work with. So these walls that we're surrounded by are so, they so tell a story that it's really interesting. You walk in the building and you immediately get the sense that something special has happened in here before and has been happening here for 122 years now. So it's neat that we had these walls to work within. As much as a pain as it has been to work within these walls, and it would have been so much easier to just knock them down and build a completely new building. I'm really glad that we saved the walls and that we were able to save the walls. It was tricky and made the design of building stuff within these walls tricky. What we did, what's really neat about the project is that we built a new building inside an old building, and the two are barely connected. You think when you look at a building like this, you assume that the brick walls are holding up the roof, but in this building, that's not the case. The steel, all this new structure that we built is actually what's holding up the roof, and the new building is actually supporting the bricks. So what we found when we dug down is that when this was built in 1889, and what they did is they just built bricks straight down to dirt. So there was no foundation. It was just brick sitting on top of dirt. And we had to dig down deeper to put in new plumbing in the new basement. So when we got down to where we expected to find the foundation, there was none. So the walls themselves are neither plumb nor square, so they're curvy. And when you look around at these steel beams, you'll see that they're different distances away from the brick. At the bottom, they'll be 2 inches away, and at the top, they'll be actually touching. So we built a square, plumb, perfect building inside this really imperfect set of walls, which made it really challenging, extremely challenging. But like I said, the result is really something that's just beautiful. And I really couldn't be happier with the way the room looks and feels, and I feel like the room is going to perform beautifully. And that whole process of figuring out could we get tax incentives for rebuilding a historic landmark, that whole thing got very confusing. And it turned out that our rooftop additions disqualified us from some of that historic designation. But we had to build the rooftop additions in order to help pay for the interior historic part that we have here. So we were really stuck between a rock and a hard place as far as what to build. Because if we just built the interior venue that we have here, it wouldn't have paid for itself. So we had to figure out a way to be open more hours of the day. That's the dilemma of a rock and roll club, is that you're only open from 9 p.m. till 2 a.m.
It's just gonna start out with like pulled pork barbecue and chicken salad and an all vegan tofu chicken salad and pimento cheese.
I can't wait to see as well with the rooftop bar that I'm hearing about. Yeah. I think that they're going to do some acoustic music and whatnot up there, so it's going to be even better than it was before.
More of an adult crowd and who'd want to come when there's not a show and just hang out and have drinks and something to eat and you know, yeah, just enjoy the scenery.
So now we can be open from 11 a.m. until 2 a.m. and that more than triples the hours that we're open every day. So that really helps pay for the entire project.
A classic place for people to come together, see a great show, dance. I can't tell you how many times I've danced down in the Georgia Theater, how many times I've been out on a mosh pit, getting thrown around, and having a great time.
It's definitely an icon. I mean, it's something that people can identify with.
The thing I like about it is it's one of the bigger venues in Athens, but it doesn't have any sort of, I don't want to say personality is the wrong word, but it's not attached persona like the 40 Watt is. This type of music here all the time. The Georgia Theater is very open. It has a more open personality than other larger venues in this town would have.
I felt like in the meantime, it felt sort of a little out of balance, and I was wondering what was going to happen, you know, as far as large bands, touring bands, where are they going to play, you know, and just maintaining this sort of weird balance between jam bands and hipsters, you know, which is one way to look at the world of Athens sometimes.
Being a small town and such a big venue, I guess it was kind of a big question mark as to whether or not it would return or should return. It's like, it's a big room to fill for such a small town, so I was kind of curious as to how it was going to come back, you know, and it looks like it's come back and then some.
In a way, I compare the Georgia Theater to what Winterland was to people in San Francisco, a place that had really great national acts, but good local people, and it was a very community place, antique-y kind of place, a place where you didn't see cops inside and stuff like that. The security they were people just like you, that kind of thing.
And I mean, you know, it was hallowed ground to go up in there because it was Pylon and REM and B-52s and David Byrne, and you know, I can't even name all the amazing performers that had been in that green room, you know, that had sat on that nasty couch.
I think it's become less of the big local venue and can become more of like a regional venue again, you know, where we might steal some shows from some big cities down the road that we used to miss out on because they were headed to bigger venues. So it's nice to have a room that can, you know, take all that and be a cool room.
Georgia Theater is a wonderful, wonderful place that we have in town, but I kind of took it for granted for a while. It's a fantastic music venue that has so much history, and I feel really blessed to have played in it, but in the old fashion. But I cannot wait to see what the new one looks like.
This property, 215 North Lumpkin Street, has always been, since day one, has been a place to meet your friends and congregate and hang out. And that's a really neat thing, that this building, the way we've built it now, it's going to be here for 200 more years. You know, so in a way, we've guaranteed that this place is going to serve the same function that it has served for such a long time. It's going to continue to serve that. And to me, that's a big deal. That's really important, that no matter, you know, who knows what people are going to congregate and do together 30, 40, 50 years from now, but hopefully it'll be inside these walls.
That's what's kind of neat about it, is that people that have not even been making a name for themselves for very long, you know, have that as kind of like the top of their totem pole, as well as people that are on tour all of the time that have, you know, they really want to make sure to stop through Athens and play the Georgia Theater. It's something that's important to everybody in the whole musical spectrum of, you know, new to the music scene and somebody that's played for a really long time.
I really feel like we owe it to the next generation and the generation after that for them to be able to have those same stories. It ties generations together. When your parents and you can have a similar experience. Oh, well, you know, I fell in love at the Georgia Theater, or I saw a band at the Georgia Theater that ended up being huge. You know, there's a difference between seeing a show and seeing a concert, you know, and so you come here and you can see a show. You can see something that not the rest of the world knows about yet.
You know, Will and Scott have really pushed the bar up as far as what we're exposed to in this sort of smaller town. It's a great stopover from Atlanta for a lot of national acts, Atlanta to Athens and then up to North Carolina or wherever they're going on their tour. I think that's a huge part of what they're about, and it's a huge, plays a huge role in what they do for the community. You know, they bring a lot of national attention to Athens.
This is an old lady. You got to take care of her. You know, you got to treat her like a lady, and it's hard. She requires a whole lot of TLC, and the guys that owned it before me were just tired of, you know, they needed a divorce from this old lady, and I came in and swooped her off her feet, you know, and so I'm glad that we have the opportunity to give this place a facelift. I know of people, I know of children who were conceived in the Georgia Theater, you know? And people have gotten engaged in the Georgia Theater. People have gotten married in the Georgia Theater. People have definitely fallen in love in the Georgia Theater, whether it be for the right reason or not. But, you know, you get that many people, just the odds are in your favor that crazy things are gonna happen.
It's just an old sweet song. Keeps Georgia on my mind.
It's always been a landmark, you know. Growing up here, it's always been this, you know, sign, the marquee out front, and you would drive by or walk by and see what's happening today. It's like reading the newspaper or something.
It's just an old sweet song, but it keeps Georgia.
My whole dream in life was to play at the Georgia Theater.
It's home.
It's built to last. We've really built it to last for a long time, and to be solid and to be safe and to be fun. That's what it's all about.
I love that place. I can't wait to go over there and get in mischief.
A lot of cigarettes, a lot of hard work. Wilmot Green has felt the stress of an entire community that has felt lost and out of balance. With the excitement and support of generations of music fans, this man has brought the magic and the music back to 215 Lumpkin Street. I'm Charlie Mack Alexander.
I can't wait to puke in the elevator.
Yeah, me too.
That's gonna be awesome.
Leaned down and scooped it up with my hands and put it in the trash can. Scooped it up and put it in the trash can. And I'm like, you can wash your hands. Was that too much?
One of the last things I saw at the Georgia Theater was midget wrestling. I'm not joking about this. I mean, it's not my fault. I just walked in there and saw it.
Everything, is this going good? Is it conversational? Yeah, okay. I'm feeling kind of conversational. Feeling good.